Peloton Bike Plus versus Keiser M3i. In today's video, we're going to cover two flagship bikes that one costs about $2,000 and the other costs about $2,500. So right off the bat, let's address some of the big differences between these two bikes, and then we'll dive into the details and look at some of the similarities and other features. So I've had quite a bit of time on each of these two bikes, and they're both excellent machines that feel great to ride. Obviously, one of the biggest differences between these two bikes is the Peloton Bike Plus has a massive rotating touchscreen on it, and also if you want to be able to use the classes and stuff that come on the Peloton bike, you have to pay that monthly recurring membership fee. At the time of this recording, that monthly membership fee is $39 per month, but it might change over time. And while you're not committed to using any particular platform on the Keiser M3i, Keiser did launch their new app called The Ride. Right now, that app costs $6.99 per month to use. Or you can also sign up for a full year for $74.99. But if you don't want to use that app, you can use the Keiser M3i with any platform you want, like the Peloton Digital app or Apple Fitness Plus, or just nothing at all. And obviously, there's a lot more differences between these two bikes, like the location of the flywheel, the back versus the front, the mass of that flywheel, and the way it affects the drivetrain feel, max resistance. Also, the location of the resistance mechanism and how that mechanism works, mechanical versus digital. Also, another big difference is the Q factor. So let me just grab the camera and show you around. So in just a moment, we'll take a look at the flywheels and the magnetic resistance and the Q factors on both these bikes. But the very first thing I want to show you is the resistance knobs. So on the Keiser M3i, you actually get a mechanical resistance lever that is very quick and easy to adjust your resistance. It's right up here by the handlebars, so you can very easily access it. Also, just looking at the resistance lever, you can see about what resistance you're on. And that is a mechanical operating resistance lever, so it doesn't matter if you have batteries in the console or not, that resistance will still work. And while we're speaking of batteries, the Keiser does not plug into the wall, so you could bring this bike outside or move it to somewhere that doesn't have a power outlet. On the Peloton Bike Plus, you get a traditional red resistance knob that is operated digitally. Now this has a few implications, like one, you have to plug it into the wall for that resistance to work, but also since that resistance knob is not a mechanical device, you can use this touchscreen monitor up here to adjust the resistance. So adjusting the resistance on the Peloton Bike Plus is actually really easy. You just reach down and rotate that knob and it adjusts really quickly. Although I have to admit, on the Keiser M3i, you can adjust the resistance quicker and it's a little bit more convenient. But the really neat thing about the Peloton Bike Plus is there is something called auto follow, where you just click on this little button here and it will automatically adjust your resistance for you during the rides. We'll take a closer look at the metrics and all the stuff they give you up on this massive rotating touchscreen here in just a moment, but first, let's go back to that Q factor thing I was talking about. So taking a look at the Q factor, you probably can't really tell this by looking at the actual pedals here, but the distance between the left crank arm and right crank arm, which is the Q factor, is 197 millimeters on the Keiser M3i. As comparison, the Q factor on the Peloton Bike Plus is 170 millimeters from crank arm to crank arm. So I've been doing a little bit of research on Q factor, and 170 kind of falls in that narrow range, whereas the Keiser M3i would be 197, and that kind of falls in the wide range. So really it's kind of a personal preference thing and kind of has to do with like your hips and how far you like your feet spaced apart when you're riding a bike. And ultimately the Q factor is just kind of one more thing that makes the ride feel different on the Keiser M3i compared to the Peloton Bike Plus. But another major thing has to do with the flywheel. So on the Peloton Bike Plus, you get the flywheel on the front of the bike, and I believe this flywheel mass is 38 pounds. Additionally, as we look at the flywheel, we can see that there is some sort of mass right here, and it kind of changes the mass distribution of the flywheel. The Keiser M3i flywheel, on the other hand, is located on the back of the bike, and this flywheel mass is only about 8 pounds, and also it is not a perimeter weighted flywheel, so we can see that the disc is smooth and uniform across. So in my experience, I do not believe the location of the flywheel on the bike has any sort of relevancy in the way the bike feels to ride. However, one thing that it does influence is that sweat drip zone. So when you ride the Keiser M3i, your sweat will kind of fall straight down there, not onto the flywheel. And in comparison to the Peloton bike, your sweat could potentially fall down into the drivetrain. And in just a few moments here, I'm gonna hop on each of these bikes back to back and compare the drivetrain feel. But before we do that, let me show you a few other things first. So looking at both these bikes from a distance, we can see the Keiser M3i has that very unique V shape where as you contract everything down, the frame and everything gets smaller, and as you raise it up, it gets a lot taller and expands more. According to the spec sheet here, the Keiser M3i can fit a rider from 4'10" all the way up to 7 feet. On the other hand, the Peloton Bike Plus claims to only fit a rider up to a max height of 6'5", which I am 6'5", and I feel like I easily fit on this bike, and this bike could probably fit a rider taller than 6'5". The minimum height listed for the Peloton bike is 4'11". Also, depending on where you look, the maximum user weight of the Keiser M3i is either 350 pounds or, listed on the frame here, the max user weight is listed at 300 pounds. I don't believe that there's an official max weight listed for the Peloton Bike Plus, however 297 pounds is the max tested weight that I've seen. Both of these bikes are very robust machines, and I would say that their max user weight capacity is kind of listed on the conservative side, whereas in comparison, some Amazon bikes I've seen, some cheap ones that don't feel nearly as robust as these machines, have max user weights listed at like 330. Real quick, I just want to show you that the Peloton Bike Plus has dual water bottle holders right up here in the front, directly over the flywheel. Additionally, there are weight holders in the back of the bike. On the Keiser M3i, there are weight holders up here on the front of the bike, and you get a single water bottle holder that goes right here, and it's designed to funnel spilled fluids away from the drivetrain, and it's all enclosed, so it won't get water and stuff inside your drivetrain is the idea. So the Keiser M3i does have that lighter flywheel, and it is a lighter bike in general. It weighs like right around like 90 pounds roughly, and the Peloton Bike Plus weighs like 130 pounds. So one of the really big differences between these two bikes is their adjustability point. So the Peloton Bike Plus is actually only 3-way adjustable, meaning the handlebars do not have the ability to move forwards and backwards. They just raise and lower. The seat raises and lowers, and there are no holes that you need to click into on this bike, so you do get micro adjustments on the Peloton Bike Plus. On the Keiser M3i, you do get that forward and backward adjustability for moving the handlebars forwards and backwards. So in addition to the handlebars raising and lowering, and the saddle raising and lowering and going forwards and backwards, just like the Peloton Bike Plus, you also get that additional ability to move the handlebars forwards and backwards, which can make for a more comfortable ride. Now, the adjustments on the Keiser M3i work a little bit differently. There is a hole you need to click into. They are spaced very close together. However, since there is a hole for you to click into for both raising the saddle up and down, as well as the handlebar adjustments in the front, that does mean that you won't be able to get exact, like super fine-tuned adjustments. But on the other hand, it does kind of make it a more secure, locked in position. So you know it's not gonna like eventually over time like get loose and begin to slide down on you. So since there is no hole to click into on the Peloton Bike Plus for raising and lowering the saddle, you do get those micro adjustments, and I have not had any problems personally with this saddle like sliding down on me. However, I do know that some people have said that they have an issue where the saddle will kind of like lower down on them over time. The hand grip positions on the Peloton Bike Plus are great. I like them. They're nice and thick. They're flat across this way. You get this additional position right here. This spot here is nice, and out here for position 3 is also good. Both the Peloton Bike Plus and the standard Peloton bike both use this like rubberized material that feels nice to the touch, and it's nice and grippy. As comparison, the Keiser M3i bike uses a slightly different material. This one feels like a little bit like softer to the touch and has like a little bit of like a squish to it. I like them both. The Keiser hand grip positions are kind of unique, where you get position 1 here, position 2 here, and then 3 here for out of the saddle. And then you kind of get like some additional spots out here as well. On the Peloton Bike Plus, these handlebars kind of have a tendency for these bolts here to come loose over time, and that results in your entire handlebar assembly being kind of loose and wobbly. So what you need to do is just kind of tighten these bolts up every now and then, or maybe get some blue Loctite on them to keep them in place. And speaking of keeping things in place, let's talk about mobility. So moving the Peloton Bike Plus is actually pretty difficult to move around just because it's so heavy. It does have the heavy flywheel on the front of the bike, but that big screen up there makes it a little bit difficult to move, and those weights, you gotta remember to remove them so they don't fall out when you move it. Keiser M3i is just a lighter, easier to move bike. Really pretty moot point, but just thought I would comment on it. Also, let's talk about durability real quick. So the Keiser M3i is a commercial grade bike. You find this in like studios, you find this in gyms. It's a really common, legit commercial indoor cycling bike that you do see all over the place. On the other hand, the Peloton Bike Plus is a at-home exercise bike, so it's not a commercial bike like the Keiser M3i. In terms of durability, I personally have not had any problems with my Peloton Bike Plus, this one or the previous one that I had in my home, but you know, some people do have problems with them, and if you do come across a problem right now, anyway, at the time of this recording, the customer support time and shipping time and stuff for like replacement parts could potentially be kind of long. And here's what the pedals look like on the Keiser M3i if you have not seen them yet. They are a SPD clip-in style on one side. There's a relatively large platform. So on the other side here, there are cage style pedals. So you can put just like normal gym shoes on and ride this bike. You don't have to have SPD clip-in pedals, but you can use them. Also on the Keiser website, they talk a lot about the crank arm angle here, being able to more easily accommodate a normal size shoe, like a big wide gym shoe. So out of the box, Peloton gives you these style pedals, which I actually removed these because you need a certain kind of shoe that has like a big bulky thing under it that you really can't walk on your shoes when you use with this style pedal. So what I did is just put on these normal SPD clip-in pedals here because they're a lot easier to clip in and unclip from. And in addition to that, you can wear a normal SPD cleat shoe, and there is no big bulky thing on the bottom of this shoe. So when you get off the bike, you can actually like walk around. So real quick before I hop on this bike and kind of compare drivetrains, let me show you the metrics. So the Keiser M3i gives you your RPMs, you know, your cadence, your power output here in terms of watts. You can hook up your heart rate monitor, you get time, you also get your gear displayed right here as well as trip. In addition to all that cool stuff, there is a little tablet holder right here so you can bring your own device and hook it up, and you can get those same metrics displayed up to other apps. So, you know, the beauty of the Keiser M3i is this bike is kind of more open platform, you know, and it is compatible with a lot of other apps. So the Keiser M3i is compatible with Zwift and many other platforms. So the Peloton Bike Plus also gives you all of your good metrics, you know, like your cadence, your power output, and your resistance number here. Also, you get your FTP zones after you do the FTP test, so you can see your zones 1 through 7 and where you're at, beautifully displayed right up here on the screen. Also, obviously, you get, you know, total output, calories, distance, all the good stuff. And I don't have my heart rate monitor hooked up right now, but you do get your heart rate displayed right up here in the corner as well. As far as I'm concerned, the power accuracy on both of these bikes seems about accurate to me. Neither of them use a strain gauge to measure power, so they are both an estimate. So according to the Keiser website, they have a EN 957-10 certification for power accuracy. And I'm not really sure exactly what that means, but honestly, I think the power accuracy on both these bikes is just fine. Anyway, let me throw on my shoes and then hop on both these bikes and kind of give them a ride, share my thoughts and opinions with you, and then I'll wrap this video up with my final thoughts. So starting over here on the Keiser M3i, I'm just going to kind of feel out the drivetrain and then compare it to the Peloton Bike Plus and try to just describe to you guys the differences between these two bikes. So on minimum resistance here, you know, minimum resistance, easy turning the pedals over, and you can very quickly adjust that resistance here, like up to max, super easy. In general, the Keiser M3i is supposed to kind of like more simulate a real road bike riding feel with the way the flywheel mass is only like 8 pounds, and also how that mass is distributed on the flywheel. So in general, I think that Keiser did a really good job making this bike feel like a real outdoor road bike. This bike is not 100% silent. There is a little bit of noise in the drivetrain. The pedals do make a little bit of a squeaking, but that is because these pedals on this bike are really, really old. I bought this bike used and it has a lot of miles on it, so the pedals do need a tune-up. But other than that, like the actual noise of the flywheel is pretty much silent for the most part, just a small amount of noise. But in terms of like the way the bike feels to ride, it has like a little bit of like a mechanical kind of feel to it. Kind of like, it really just kind of like reminds me of me like actually riding my actual road bike outside down the street. So adding on a little bit of resistance here, by the time you get to like gear 10, it makes like a pretty big change in resistance. And then the max resistance is 24, which is like extremely strong. This is max. But like everything like in the middle, like this bike has a great range of resistances for riding, you know, at pretty much whatever cadence and intensity you could imagine. In terms of the display up here on the screen, you know, like when I change my cadence, if I go from like this cadence to stopping, there is a little bit of lag there, about 1 second I would say. So it's not like terrible, but probably not as quick to update as the Peloton Bike Plus. The gear changes do respond instantly. It shows me on the screen, and the power changes are also pretty instantaneous. In general, being on this bike, I feel comfortable on it. I don't feel like I'm too stretched out. I feel comfortable riding it. I can get in position 3 here on the saddle. And you know, it's a very smooth feeling drivetrain, and I like the Keiser M3i. So now let's hop on the Peloton Bike Plus. All right, on the Peloton Bike Plus, let's clip in here, get the pedals turning over, feel it out. So I'm on resistance 0 here. First thing I can notice is the Peloton Bike Plus is actually quieter. Not a big deal, but the Peloton Bike Plus does make a little bit of noise in the drivetrain. There's kind of like a little bit of a whining noise as you begin to turn the pedals faster and faster. Right away on 0 resistance, the first thing I can notice is the momentum of this flywheel definitely does carry more. So you do kind of get that more indoor cycling studio feel ride on a Peloton bike as in comparison to like the outdoor road bike style feel you get on the Keiser M3i. So over here on resistance 0, yeah, I can feel that momentum definitely carries through more with this bigger, heavier flywheel and whatever they got going on inside the Peloton Bike Plus. So adding on a little bit of resistance here, get up to about 38 right now. You know, that makes a pretty big jump. Moving on up to 62. Getting out of the saddle here on resistance 80, 90, max resistance. So both these bikes have a great max resistance and minimum resistance, and the drivetrains feel great on both these bikes, but they definitely feel different. So really kind of on like a medium resistance here of 38% on the Peloton Bike Plus. The big difference I can really notice on this bike is the pedals kind of like tend to just carry more momentum because of that heavier flywheel most likely. In terms of lag from the metrics and stuff, like if I stop pedaling this bike and hit the brake, I'm on cadence 84 right now. So there's about a second lag on the cadence sensor here. You know, resistance updates really quickly. Also, the digital magnetic resistance on this bike changes very quickly. So you can change the resistance quicker on the Keiser M3i because it's that mechanical lever, but this one changes pretty much as quickly as you would expect a bike to be able to change. So straight back on over here on the Keiser M3i. Yeah, I mean, it's a great feeling drivetrain, but definitely, you know, it just has like a little bit of a different feel to it. But definitely both bikes are like really sturdy and just kind of different. So yeah, the lighter flywheel on this bike is like, has less momentum to it, but still like there is good momentum there. And the way Keiser describes it is, I believe the lighter flywheel will make it so you're riding the bike and the bike's not riding you. And you know, I kind of feel like that's true to some degree. Like if you get too heavy of a flywheel, those pedals will like really just like push through the next pedal stroke, whereas like a lighter flywheel is more similar to like what a real road bike would feel like. Now obviously both these bikes are fixed drivetrains, so it's not really like exactly like riding a freewheel bike. Like outdoor road bikes are freewheels. I do have one bike here that does have a freewheel and not a fixed drivetrain, so if you want to check that out, I'll put a link below the video. But really kind of my summary in comparing like the two drivetrains of these bikes are, they're both great. Like I like both these bikes a lot. They're both great machines. I think that it really would just kind of come down to personal preference on what sort of drivetrain feel you personally like. But really, both these bikes are great machines. Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot to do a max resistance test between these two bikes. Keiser M3i definitely has a higher maximum resistance than the Peloton Bike Plus. My goodness, this is a strong max. But we also have a good minimum too. So what are my final thoughts on the Peloton Bike Plus versus Keiser M3i? Well, you know, there's a few things going on here. One, first and foremost, I think the most important thing is, do you want to be locked into Peloton? Are you okay with paying that $39 per month monthly recurring fee and also being subject to that price potentially changing down the road? Because if you don't pay that monthly fee, you can't access the classes on the Peloton Bike Plus. And when you do sign up for that Peloton All Access membership, you do get quite a few benefits and bonuses, you know, like the leaderboard, and I have more stuff about that linked in my videos below this video in the description box. But if you don't care about that All Access Peloton membership and you want to use a different platform, the Keiser M3i is a great commercial grade indoor cycling bike option. So the Keiser M3i has been around for a long time, like over 10 years, I believe. And you find this bike in like gyms all around the country and probably the world, and you know, studios. The Keiser M3i is really popular and it has a really good reputation. A lot of people love the Keiser M3i, and I can see why. So you can use the Keiser bike with a lot of platforms. So you can use it with Zwift, you can use it with Peloton digital app, which costs like 13 bucks per month right now at the time of this recording. You can use it with Apple Fitness Plus. You can use it with no app at all, or you know, just a lot of options and choices for you. Another good thing the Keiser M3i has going for it is the max saddle height on this bike, which I did demonstrate in a different video. Goes up really, really high. So this bike will fit somebody up to like 7 feet tall. So the max height is definitely higher on the Keiser than the Peloton. Additionally, the Keiser M3i does have that 4-way adjustability, so you can move the handlebars forwards and backwards for more adjustments. The Keiser M3i runs on a battery and you don't have to plug it into the wall. So, you know, you can move this bike outside or somewhere that does not have access to a power outlet. The Q factor for, you know, how far apart your feet are when you're riding is relatively wide on the Keiser M3i, and the Peloton Bike Plus is kind of more on the narrow end of the spectrum. And obviously the price point of these two bikes, the Keiser M3i is less expensive than the Peloton Bike Plus, but a little bit more expensive than the standard Peloton bike, which is a different machine. So which bike would I buy if I were forced into a position where I had to get one of these two bikes? I don't know. They're both great machines. They are just different machines. This one has more of that road bike feel, open platform. Peloton has that more indoor studio kind of ride feel and vibe to it. Also, you know, Peloton Bike Plus just costs more. You do get that screen and a lot of cool stuff on that screen. Anyway, I just wanted to do this quick comparison video for you guys. If you didn't know anything about either of these two bikes or you just wanted to learn more about it, give me a thumbs up if you did find any value in this video. Any questions or comments, please leave down below the video in the comment section. And also, I do have a link to buy either of these bikes below the video, and if you did buy through that link, it would help support this channel and I would greatly appreciate it. However, as you already know, I'm not trying to convince you to buy either one of these bikes. I have a lot of indoor cycling bike reviews on my channel, so browse my channel for more reviews. And also, if you want to be notified about my new videos coming out, which you might have noticed that box back there in the background, I have a new exciting bike review coming very soon. Be sure to click that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you get notified about my new videos, and I'll see you in my next video.